Hey, good morning. This is Pastor Harvey Beck at Lester Memorial United Methodist Church. If you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you. I do a Wednesday devotion, and as I shared with you, if you've been listening on Wednesday regularly, that we're doing a Wednesday night in-person worship service in the sanctuary. And we're doing it on Proverbs. Pastor Joe and I both are teaching. I'm teaching tonight. And so what I've been doing is actually sharing the devotion as a part of Proverbs. So I'm going to share part of what I'll share tonight. I encourage you to come. We do wear masks and we separate out so you can have social distancing and so forth. I hope you'll come. But I'm going to give you a part of the devotion that'll actually be for tonight out of Proverbs. And so the lesson tonight and then for today is called God versus man. And God and man, what do we need to know about our own humanness as we relate ourselves to God? And so today is October the 21st, beautiful day outside. I hope you'll be able to get outside and enjoy it. And again, we welcome you this morning. Let me begin by just reminding you that Proverb addresses a lot about wisdom. So we've been talking about wisdom. So what kind of wisdom do we need to know when we acknowledge that God is our maker? So Proverbs addresses three questions about God and we humans. Number one, who is God? How does God, number two, how does God deal with mankind? And number three, how should man respond to God? And so Solomon demonstrates insights how one's commitment to wisdom reflects that person's commitment to God. Because if you're seeking the true wisdom that comes from above, you're going to be seeking the God who gives us this wisdom. And so Solomon in Proverbs reminds us of that. And so who is God? God is man's maker. He created you. I realize most of you probably listening to this devotion believe that. I hope that you do, that there is a maker and a creator. And so how does that make things different in our relationship and our response to God by the fact that we know that He created us, He is our maker? What does this imply about our responsibility to God? And in a world that desperately needs wisdom, and in a world that desperately needs a relationship with Jesus Christ, it's important that we're reminded that God is our maker, that He is the righteous one, He is the holy one, as Proverbs describes Him. Pastor Joe Hastings preached a great sermon Sunday, and he made reference to Genesis, the first chapter. And I want to read that because it reminds us we are created in the image of God. We are image bearers of God. So what kind of icon or image do we bear of God? So Genesis 1, verse 26, God said, let us make man, we humans. Let's make them in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created humans in His own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created them. So we get that understanding right straight out of Genesis. But again, what kind of image are we bearing? And what does that make a difference in our lives? Even how we go to the polls and vote in a few weeks. Does it make a difference that we realize there is a creator and there is a God? Do we have a biblical worldview, a biblical understanding of what's going on? God's wisdom provides us with a biblical understanding of what's going on in the universe. Proverbs 22:2, since we're in Proverbs, it talks about this, God's connection with we humans. Proverbs 22:2, the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. And so we need to acknowledge that. I'll read to you from Psalms 95. For the Lord is the great God, and the King, He is the great King above all gods, little g. In His hand are the deep places of the earth. The heights of the hills are His also. The sea is His. He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. O come and let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture and the sheep of His hand. today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts in the rebellion, as in the day of the trial of the wilderness. Another passage in Proverbs 14, verse 31, he who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker, but he who honors him has mercy on the needy. And then in verse 34 of Proverbs 14, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. I think that's why we need to understand that we have a maker and a creator, and we were created in his image. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Isaiah 29:15, woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel far from the Lord, and their works are in the dark. They say, who sees us, or who knows us? Again, this is Isaiah 29:15. Those who try to hide things from God. Who sees us? Who knows us? But verse 16 says, surely you have things turned around. Shall the potter be esteemed as the clay? For shall the thing made say of him who made it, he did not make me? Or shall the thing formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding? So those are only a few. We'll look at some more tonight as we talk about God as our maker. But why is that important to you? Does that help shape the way you live your life? Well, of course it does, and it should, as we acknowledge him. You know, the Bible says in Psalms, and it implies it more than once, that the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Romans 9:20, but indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have power over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor? Again, another Proverbs 30, verse 4. Who has ascended into heaven or descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fist? The wind in his fist. Who has bound the waters in a garment, in his garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if you know? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. This is Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. It's important that we know that God created us. It's going to give us a different perspective on life. It's going to humble us to his hand and to his love. Also tonight, we're going to talk about these three theological understandings that we have of God. Omniscient, all-knowing, omnipresent, he's everywhere, and he's omnipotent. He's all-powerful. Theologically, how does that change our perspective on life itself, but also on our relationship with God? What responsibility should that give us? So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the sovereignty of God, and I'll give you a quick definition. He is absolute, and he is the sole ruler of the universe. And so that's the sovereignty of God. We're going to continue to talk about those things tonight. I'm also going to ask those tonight this question. I want to ask you this, in light of God being our maker and accepting that. Are you in a struggle for control? God's holiness and his omniscience, his all-knowing, mean that he cares passionately about your purity and that you can't hide impurity from him. Are you trying to hide anything from God by hiding it from yourself? Have you faced the fact that denial is impossible? God is our maker. That's important to know. And he's created us in his image. That's how much he loves us. I hope that knowing that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere present, helps shape how we live our lives. And so we should humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, who is our maker and our creator. Love you. Hope you have a golden day. Bye-bye.